Hi, my name's Kiana, and I wanted to welcome you to our webinar for today, which is running for re-election.
Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Cowan. I work here at Emily's List. I'm the Regional Director for State and Local Campaigns, and my region is the Northeast, which includes all of New England, plus New York and New Jersey.
And as I mentioned, my name is Kiana McKenzie. I am the Deputy Director for State and Local Fundraising. So I work with tons of fabulous candidates about the art of fundraising, covering specifically the Midwest. And we're just super excited to be here tonight to help you all as you think through how to run for your election throughout the cycle.
One other thing that I wanted to mention before we get started is, in addition to working here at Emily's List, I am also elected myself. I live in New Hampshire, and I serve as vice chair on the select board in the town that I live in. So I will be running for re-election in 2021 along with all of you.
So basically what she's saying is that she's putting all of these things into practice herself.
That's right.
And you should follow her great example.
That's right. Okay, so let's cover our agenda. Here's what we'll be covering tonight in our short time that we have together. We have the welcome, which you just heard, and housekeeping items. Then we'll be moving on to engagement and outreach. We'll take some questions, and then Kiana will tell you everything you need to know about fundraising. And then we'll close with some final questions that you all have.
Great. So before we dive in, we just wanted to make sure you all know and understand what Emily's List is, right? I think we have some new folks, which is exciting. So Emily's List is the largest resource for women in politics. We've helped elect pro-choice Democratic women up and down the ballot since 1985. That includes 150 women to the House of Representatives, 26 to the Senate, 16 governors, and over 1,100 women to state and local offices. And I think 46,000 of you have now signed up for our Run to Win list. So we are obviously growing more and more every day, every year. It's super exciting. We want to help elect more women. So again, we're just super excited that you decided to join us today so we can make this happen.
So we just wanted to cover some webinar norms. We want to invest in our time together, and we'll take, as we talked about, we'll take 2 question and answer breaks. I'll run through some slides, and then again, we'll take 2 questions. When you're thinking about your questions, this is a safe space, right? So all questions are valid. Whatever pops into your head, no question is too stupid to ask. Please type them in the text box in your webinar toolbox.
That also includes if we use a phrase or something that you don't understand, like please just let us know. We're happy to go over those, but sometimes we get caught up in using lingo that not everybody uses. So like, let us know what that is so that we can make sure that you understand and you walk away with everything you came for.
And then again, all slides are internal, so please respect the sisterhood. This is, please don't share this material and content with others.
Yes, it's for women, by women, it's all for us.
All right, here we go. So the first piece of running for re-election is to think about your constituents and how you've been in touch with them. You are an elected official, and you have a platform which is different than a candidate to communicate your success in the position from your votes or your speeches or your press clips. And the important thing is to communicate with your district. In this section, we will go over ways to spread your message and to continue to share your story. So I know you all are doing this, but I also know life gets in the way and sometimes it's kind of hard. But what you really want to do is you want to keep track of any and all statements you make, including the votes that you take, news clips that you have, and floor debates, especially when you've been especially brilliant and had really pithy things to say. And I know you all have Google alerts set to your name, so make sure to check those. And I would also recommend, based on personal experience, have somebody else maybe read the comments, and you can, respond as you see fit on social media.
And it's really important to do this because, again, you ran on a platform, right? Like there were certain things that were important to you that you told the voters that you would work on. And like now you have a legislative record. And so you want to make sure that you have a list of these things so that when it's time for reelection, you can go back and show the folks who voted you in, here's how I did the work. Here is what here's what your vote meant to our community, to our district, to our state. And so you want to make sure that you can prove the case that you deserve to be reelected, and you having a list of those accomplishments will be helpful as you gear up for your reelection.
That's exactly right. And I'm sure because you are elected, you're hearing from folks. So you have a sense of what's important in your district. For example, for me, there are issues that pop up that I had no idea about or I wasn't thinking about when I was running for for the office initially. For example, water quality just wasn't really on my radar, and now it is a big issue in my district. So I need to be up on it and know what's happening and be able to communicate clearly what I'm doing as a town official to make sure the drinking water is safe for my constituents.
Awesome.
Okay. Whoops.
Yeah. So following your legislative priorities gives you a stronger message for reelection. Again, make sure folks know how you've done the work over the course of your term so that you can make the case that you deserve to be reelected.
Okay. So you want to add to your personal story, which will not change drastically from when you first ran. So the change should really be in your resolve and your ask. So when you think about your situation, it isn't probably different from when you first decided or started to run for office, but your reaction now is different because it's not hypothetical, right? It's like you are in there, you are reacting, and the statements that you make matter, and the votes that you take matter. Mm-hmm. So how can you make sure that you're communicating and it's fitting within your personal story and within your personal narrative while also accounting for the things that sort of come up and pop up organically. And then you can take your result, because now you have a platform. Instead of just saying what hypothetically you'll do, you can say here is what I did. Mm-hmm. And then that is your ask. So your ask should be here, based on what I said, here's what I did, here's the action that I took. And then together, when you reelect me, mm-hmm. here is how much further we can go.
And I think the strongest message is always the fact that people elected you because they believe that you could do the job, right? And people want to help change the world, change the circumstances in their community. So this is a good place to remind them that this is a place where they are engaging in that work. By voting you in the first time they accomplish something, but by continuing to elect you, they'll also continue to accomplish something and to continue to change their community to a place that they want it to be.
Exactly. Okay, so here are the different ways that I'm sure you're communicating to your constituents and who are your voters. So if you're not doing these things, here's a really good time to start doing them. So we're talking about coffee hours, town halls, newsletters, social media, community events, constituent visits. You can use these tactics to communicate with voters and to share your story. Now, one thing that's been actually really effective for me as an elected mm-hmm. is going door to door about issues. So I don't reserve it for when I'm running for re-election or when I'm running for election, because oftentimes it's really a good entry to start a conversation with people who I wouldn't necessarily have talked to. And because I'm representing everybody in the town, I don't target based on the voters who I want. I target everybody. So for example, there's and I'm talking very local level. So there's a street in my town that they were proposing to change the traffic patterns on. And so what I did was I got a local business owner who lives and works on that street to take me door to door and just listen to constituents' concerns about this. And people were floored that I was showing up at their door to talk to them and ask their questions and opinion about what was happening literally on their street. And we're really happy to take the time to talk to me. And, we had a town hall about it. We and came up with a plan to address the community's concerns, and it was really, really effective. And it's also a really good way to keep those door-to-door muscles going.
And I think what she highlights is that you need to be visible in your community. One, because you do want to have an opportunity to listen to your constituents and make sure you know what they understand and care about, but also because it's just really good to see the people who represent you in the community having coffee with other folks and having conversations, maybe showing up for the local high school championship game, just so that folks know that you're here, you're willing to listen, and you are involved and are visible. So you just want to make sure you keep those things in mind, again, as you're thinking through what your reelection will look like.
That's exactly right. And then the other thing that I'm sure I don't need to remind you to do that you're doing already is continue to use your social media accounts. So be active on all of them: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. Post consistently. I'm sure that you're emailing your list, but vary the content, the requests. Oftentimes what I do is, sometimes I'll just post an article of interest that's happening in my community, or for example, our high school basketball team had an undefeated season, which was really exciting. And so I highlighted that on my social media account, just to give little pings and keep people used to seeing my my brand on social media.
And maybe you've been interviewed by the local radio station or radio TV station, and you know that they'll be playing that piece at a certain time. You can give your followers a heads up and let them know to tune in at that time, so that they can see you talk about this really important issue, or that a vote is coming up, or something of that nature. So you just want to make sure that folks know, again, that you are active, that you're visible, and that you're working on the things that you promised you would do when you were elected to office.
That's exactly right. There's one more thing that I want to note is be sure that you know the rules about communicating from your official side and your campaign side. So, and they vary from state to state and jurisdiction. So I don't want to get into specifics, but you want to make sure that you're following those rules.
Yes, don't break the law. And don't forget your volunteer base. I actually started on campaigns as a volunteer. And these folks worked for you because they believed in you, right? They believed that you would be the advocate that they needed in the legislature, on the school board, or the city council, or whatever office you happen to hold. And so you just want to make sure you stay in touch. You want to make sure, again, if they know that their hard work isn't going unnoticed, and that because they did these things, you were in this particular position. You'll hold events throughout the year. Sometimes they'll be willing to come in and help with the mailing, or, sit at the check-in table. I also worked for an elected who every once in a while will offer, a couple of complimentary seats to the first volunteers who signed up from the list. So find ways to reward those people who helped you so much during your election, and just to keep them engaged. And obviously, another way is to send that newsletter and let them know what's happening. And again, if their hard work didn't go unnoticed.
That's exactly right. So some just ideas. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but make sure that you're doing some sort of event every quarter. And it doesn't need to be a big lift for you. It can just be hey, I'm going to go watch the local high school basketball girls team play. Why don't you come with me and we'll take over a session and cheer?
Right.
You mentioned parades yesterday.
There are often parades for all kinds of things. I'm from the Chicago area, so we have a St. Patrick's Day parade. And that's an opportunity where electeds will bring together their volunteers and have them walk with them at the different parades. So look for those opportunities where they can be fun and engaging. And sort of everybody can, again, walk and show their support of you.
That's right. Something that I aspire to do and have not done, but I would encourage all of you and myself to do, is send out a holiday card and use your volunteers to help you stuff or create or design.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, and we were just what if you asked your volunteers to think of some creative designs for your holiday card, and whichever creative design you chose was the one that got sent out to the entire district. That's a pretty big deal, and it might be something that someone's super into.
That's exactly right.
Don't be afraid to get creative and ways to engage these folks. outside of, the traditional election period.
Yeah, and your volunteers know you and love you, and you want them and need them in all subsequent campaigns.
Yep.
So something that I've done that's been really successful and fun in my town is we have a Picking the Parks Day. So we adopt a park and we all, go over there and clean it up, which is one, good for, morale and exercise and being outside, and two, really good for the town and looks really great. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to adopt another campaign. So if there's a really fabulous woman running for something, maybe it's this year in an off year, and she's running for a municipal race, take 10 of your volunteers and go blanket the town and knock doors for an afternoon.
Keep those door knocking muscles.
Keep those door knocking muscles really working. Because the other thing that does is it creates reciprocity. And when you need help, whenever you're running for re-election, that woman will send her volunteers over. And it's just a really good way to network. It's a good thing to do. It's good for your state. It's good for your city. It's good for your district. And it's also really fun.
Awesome. Keep them engaged.
That's right. So you want to keep tabs on what you've done, where you've been, and where do you need to go. So for example, say you ran a really grassroots campaign, you didn't have a lot of help. Now is the time to build relationships with all of these folks. So build relationships with leaders and influencers, because you don't have anything to prove. You've already proven it by winning election.
Right.
You're already somebody. And so you have a lot to offer, and they have a lot to offer you. So it's a really good idea to make sure that you're maintaining your relationship with leaders in your town, in your district, at your state. So one of the things that I did when I was first elected was I went and I, canvassed all the businesses in my town. Now, granted, I live in a small town, so maybe this is going to take you a little bit longer than an afternoon. But I canvassed the businesses in my town just to ask them what they were worried about, what their goals were, things like that, which really forged a relationship between me and the business district in my town. And then I just gave out my contact information, and I've heard from some of them, and I haven't heard from others. But it was it's a really good thing to do, and it's especially good if you are, you're going to think about running for re-election and you're running in 2020. Now's the time to do that when you have a little bit of time.
One of the things that I've heard from a lot of candidates when they're considering running is that this candidate only visits this part of town, right? They only do things here, but they represent me too, and we never see them. And so you just want to make sure that that's never the argument that they can make about you. And so what you want to do is think through, where have you been in the district? Have you touched every sort of area or community in the district, and what kinds of events have you gone to? So that again, you are visible everywhere, and there aren't folks saying, well, this person never steps foot in this part of the district because they only focus on that place because they live there. So make sure that these aren't arguments that people can make about you by being strategic about where you go throughout the district.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're going to want to, know what's going on in your community, which means going to or showing up at events in your district. And like Kiana said, don't pick your the ones that are really fun to do and only go to those because people will notice. And sometimes actually what that's meant for me is not going to some of the things that I really want to go to because I'm not able to go to other things. And so you want to also make sure that you know who the leaders are in the issues that matter to your district, because you're not just appealing to your own voters right now, it's to all of your constituents. You represent everybody.
Yes.
And then you want to really keep track on the publicity around your accomplishments and activities, and you want it in a Google Doc or somewhere where you can easily reference it for when you go to campaign or put it on a mailer or reference it in something and you know exactly where it was. Because the worst thing is oh, I know that somebody wrote some nice letter to the editor about me. Where was that and what happened? So really keep track of that stuff.
That all sounds fabulous. And so now we have space for questions. Again, if you have a question, feel free to type it in the box so that we can get your question and answer whatever you have for us.
But it looks like we do have some questions.
Yes, I think Leanna can help us out with that.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Leanna Strasser. I'm the Senior Director of Training here at Emily's List. And so far, we've had great questions come in. Keep them coming. Type them up in the chat box. But I want to start with this first one. I was elected last November, and I'm already feeling really burned out, being pulled in too many different directions between my legislative work, my regular job, and my family. What recommendations do you have for me to stay sane?
Oh, friend, I hear you.
Congratulations.
Yes. So yeah, it's a lot. Balancing work and family and elected office and volunteer, obligations, events. It's a lot. So what I see a lot from my work with Emily's List candidates is people often are really stressed about this and feel a need, because we're women, to go to everything that we're invited to and asked to do. And you just automatically say yes, of course, because the impulse is to make sure you're seen and you're visible. So while we talked about making sure you're seen in the district and very visible, what I also want to remind you is, like, there's a component of self-care here as well.
Yes.
And you need to make sure that you're making really smart and strategic decisions about what you spend your time doing. And you also need to make sure that you have enough bandwidth to care for yourself and care for your family, because if you're totally burned out, you're never going to run for re-election. And that's one of the things that I get questions about all the time from my candidates here at Emily's List. And so it's recognizing that it's okay to say no.
Yes.
And sometimes that's the best choice. And really making sure to balance that. The other thing that I would say is have a group of co-electeds who can sort of be your support through this, because oftentimes, like, it's just, this is a stressful situation that unless you've been elected, it's hard to empathize. And it's hard to really know what happens. So, if you have a little support group of fabulous women in your state or in your district or whatever it is, who can commiserate with you, like sometimes a glass of wine or however you relax, it is really invaluable.
Oh, it sounds great. Yes, balance. Like, balance is so key. You don't want to burn yourself out. We absolutely want you to run for re-election. And so again, taking some of those tips on, like, writing things down and really looking at, where have you been in the district? What are the events that are coming up? What are the ones that I should go to? What are the ones that I might be able to skip this month so that I can go to my daughter's recital, or so that I can spend quality time with my family, or just relax or take a nap or whatever it might be. There obviously will be some decisions where you just have to sort of make a choice, and you want to make sure that you have full information as you're making those choices, so that, again, you can take care of yourself as well as balance the needs of your re-election campaign.
Other questions?
Yeah, we'll take one more right now, and then we'll answer some more later on in the next section. So this second question here, can you go into a little more detail on how to make sure my constituents know what I'm working on and that I've been fighting for the things that I talked about during my campaign?
That is a great question. So one of the things is to make sure that you are highlighting yourself. It can feel sort of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like you're promoting yourself.
Yeah.
Which feels maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but make sure to, link to the floor vote, link to your floor speech, highlight, positive press that you're getting for the work that you're doing. And if you're not getting press, because, sometimes these races are really small and these districts are really small, and we all know the state of media right now, generate your own. So, enlist supporters to write positive letters to the editor, have people post, either tweet about you or, post Facebook posts about you that you can then reshare with a little explanation of why you're reposting that. But just make sure to highlight all of that.
Yeah. And again, people will remember why you decided to run and like what you ran on, but unless you tell them how you moved the needle on something, they'll often be like, well, they ran for this and they've not done anything. So it's really up to you to share that story. And so, like she said, you can mention it in emails, you can put it on social media, you can have a town hall and make sure folks know these things, but it's just really important. Or, as she mentioned, go door knocking, right? So, like these places where people have mentioned that this is a really important issue to me, go to them after this important vote, after the governor has signed something, after the mayor has signed something, or whatever it might be, and say, hey, I know this is a really important issue to this area. And let me tell you about what we just finished doing to make this better. And people will really appreciate the fact that you are following up on what you said. And again, reinforcing the need for you to be reelected.
That's right. And then the other thing that I really want to mention and stress here is so if your measure or your legislation or whatever it is that you're proposing that you ran on is passed and signed into law or becomes, however it's adopted in your individual circumstance, that's really great and that's cause for celebration. But you don't need to wait for that to happen, or it doesn't. And especially if it fails, it doesn't mean it's a failure on you. It just means people need to reelect you to continue the work, because oftentimes, the needle moves slowly on some of this stuff. And that doesn't mean that you can't highlight your efforts or you shouldn't highlight your efforts. And it also doesn't mean that people who voted for you once, after you said this is what you're going to do, are going to stop supporting you, because they're going to realize like you showed up, you did the work, and so it failed. So you have a Republican governor, what can you do? Like there's, you can't move the needle on everything at the time, at this exact time. So even if it doesn't pass, like sometimes that's a way to engage supporters to support you even further.
You got to keep fighting. All right, so I think that's all the time we have for questions at the moment. So thank you for those. But again, if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to type them into the chat box so that we can make sure that we answer those toward the end of the next section. So
let's move on to money.
Yes. So my very favorite part is obviously fundraising. And it's really important because we want to make sure that you have the resources you need to be reelected. And I know for some of you, this may be a difficult conversation because you just got elected, right? Like you just did all of this work and you thought that you were done making phone calls, sending emails, having events, etc. And I'm sorry to break your heart tonight, but like, this literally is what you need to do. But I promise you it's absolutely worth it, because if you do it over the course of time, if you do it by intentionally setting aside some time each week to do it, it is a lot less hectic and stressful for you over the course of your campaign. So I promise you there is a method to this madness, and just go with me. So in a campaign, you obviously have limited resources, right? Like there's always a limit of time. And now that you're an elected official, there are many more demands on your time, right? Like you have your actual legislative sort of responsibilities as an elected official. You maybe have a family, you maybe have friends, you maybe have community events, all these different things. So you just have to balance what that looks like. So again, this is one of those things where if you carve out a small amount of time per week to really focus on the fundraising, you are a lot less stressed over the course of your campaign.
You will save time in the long run.
Yes. There's obviously limited money. Like people won't be super engaged in giving all the time. But again, you have an opportunity to really build out a plan that can work for you over the course of the campaign. And we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And then people, like you have to think through who are the people who are going to be invested in your campaign? Who are the people that invested in your last campaign? And how can we keep those people active and engaged so that they too understand that you need to be reelected, and it would be great if they could reinvest in your campaign. So again, sorry, but you should be fundraising all the time. We think of fundraising as a way of communicating in a clear and precise way how someone stands to benefit from you being elected or you being reelected, right? And so if somebody is really interested in the environment and they were looking for an advocate on the environment, and there you are in the state legislature fighting for the environment, they obviously stand to benefit for you being elected. And so again, this is a place where it really makes sense to talk about what you've accomplished in the legislature, what you've accomplished on the school board since being elected, because you want folks to understand that they have benefited and they will continue to benefit if you are in office. So they can join you and reinvest in your campaign and continue to make a difference in the world. So you absolutely need a fundraising plan for the new cycle. Hopefully you had one for your original raise, in which case you then just go back and update it, right? Like you have new quarters, you have new reporting deadlines, you have more time overall to raise. And so again, you can really start to flesh out, what does this look like for me every month? Am I doing 4 hours of call time a week? Am I doing 5 hours of call time a week, which is literally 1 hour per weekday, people? Like, again, if you break it out, it is not as overwhelming as it may seem when you do it sort of in cycle. So the further out you plan, the better off your life is as it relates to these things. And you'll want to identify, again, who gave to you, why did they give, how and how much they will give. And this includes going back to your Rolodex and adding in the new people that you've met. You're an elected official now, right? And you're doing this really cool work in the community. And so you're meeting these folks who are concerned about different issues, or who have come to your office to talk about this particular thing, or you've met them at this event. Like, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of the folks that you've met and the issues that folks are really concerned about. Because again, your election is about their benefit. So how do these folks benefit from someone like you being in the office and being that core advocate for them on these issues?
Yeah, and the other thing that I would add is you don't need to prove viability because your election proved viability.
Right.
So this opens up a whole new set of folks who maybe you weren't able to reach the first time when you were running, or you were a challenger, or when you were sort of a long shot, because now it's you, and now people in your community, the leaders in your community, even people who won't necessarily be with you on every issue, but they can stand to benefit because you're in leadership, or because you are a leader and you've proven your own viability. Like, that's a reason to go to these folks and ask. So it isn't necessarily just about identifying your core supporters, the people who love you no matter what. It's about thinking through who else benefits because you are there.
Right. That's absolutely right. You also want to make sure that you're continuing to expand your network. So I always tell my lovely elected friends that, like, you have the friends that you had before you got elected, right? But you also need to continuously make new friends. This is not,
and people will want to be friends with you.
But this is definitely not a thing of like no new friends, right? Like, you want new friends. You want to continue to meet people. You want to continue to engage them on the issues that they care about and the issues that you're working on. So it you also want to ask friends and colleagues to introduce you to potential donors.
That's exactly right. And a lot of times, you can leverage if you're serving in a local office, for example, like me, I can ask the development director or the economic person in my town, like, who should I be talking to?
Right.
What businesses should I go be touring? What's coming? And this information is more readily available now that you're elected.
Yep. Continue to add everybody to your Rolodex. Everyone.
Does everybody know what a Rolodex is?
And I was just going to say that. So sometimes, again, we use these terms that everybody may not understand. So when we refer to a Rolodex, we literally mean that you take an Excel document, right? Or Excel document, do not use Word, an Excel document, and you put in the names of every person that you've met over the course of your lifetime. And I would say that I'm being exaggerating, or that I'm exaggerating by saying the course of my lifetime, but I literally do mean the course of your lifetime. And so that means you're going back to these folks that you knew when you were growing up in elementary school and that you played jump rope with in the community, right? You're going back to those folks that you went to college with and that you interned with and that you went to college with. And I think I already said that. Maybe your sorority priority or whatever it might be. All the different things that you've done over the course of your lifetime, those people go into this Excel document. And as you network and as you meet new people and as you get introduced to folks,
those folks go
though everybody
right in
goes into that same spreadsheet so that you're able to reference those folks and think through, who does it make sense for me to call? When have I called them? How much did I ask them for? Were they willing to give a contribution and invest in my campaign so that you can continue the good work that you've started? Awesome. So when we talk about fundraising and talk about targeting donors here at Emily's List, we do it through the circles of benefit. If I could see you, I would ask how many of you have heard of the circles of benefit. But it is a strategic system that helps you organize your donors and understand a donor's motivation to give. It also helps you to set priorities, right? So that you know when you should be reaching out to certain people. So in this diagram, you have the candidate as the center, because like you obviously are the middle of all things. And as you move out from that circle, you have to think a little bit more about like what your viability is in terms of this race. As an incumbent, your viability is like off the charts because you've already made it, right? And now you're just doing the work that you said that you would do. So you have your personal circle. Again, all those people you've met throughout the course of your lifetime, they're in that personal circle, right? These are the people who know, love, and trust you. And so you want to think of your family, your friends, your former colleagues. And if you haven't asked them to give you money in your first election or any previous election, you want to make sure that you absolutely do it now. The second circle is the ideological circle. So these are the people who care about those same issues and causes and things of that nature that you do. These are the folks who care about you being pro-choice, who care about you being pro-environment. And because of that, they're looking for an advocate, they're looking for a champion, and you're making sure that these folks know that that is you, that you have done the work on these issues, that you will be that vocal supporter. And if they want to make a difference on the environment, on pro-choice, on any number of issues, they absolutely want to make sure that someone like you gets back into whatever legislative body you happen to be part of.
Yep, that's exactly right. And you know, and those, the ideological circle might change slightly because you have, you know, greater constituents. Like now, instead of the people who are just naturally attracted to your candidacy,
right,
you represent everybody. So there's a chance to, you might, you know, find yourself fighting for things that you never thought you would fight for. Right. And that opens up a whole different circle. So make sure that you are, you know, calling constituents back. I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but, you know, making sure that you're answering these constituent calls, even the ones that can feel scary, because you never know what sort of common ground you'll find and how you can end up being helpful, even if you don't do exactly what the constituent asked you to do in the first place.
And if you go back to your legislative record, it will again remind you of who are some of those ideological folks that you should be reaching out to because you have done the work on that issue. You've been that champion that they didn't even know that they needed. And so now they need to send you back to the legislature. The axe to grind circle is not something that you typically focus on in the beginning of your reelection cycle because you don't know that you either have an opponent or who that opponent might be. So that's not as important, but these are people who typically personally dislike that opponent. And then the power folks are folks who are not sort of quote unquote powerful and like have, you know, this great status, but more about people who care about money and jobs, right? So like, as we talk about businesses, as we talk about folks who represent like labor, these are people who want to give to people who are going to help make sure that these jobs are available and, you know, protected for their members. I hope that makes sense, right? And these are unions, trade associations, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, and because sorry to go back, but because of, you know, because you are an incumbent, you've proved yourself,
right? And
those people are ripe for the picking, sort of in a way that maybe they weren't there for you in their first campaign. Now we can talk about call time is sacred.
Call time is sacred. And so I say this because you need to make sure that call time works for you. You need to schedule and commit to call time throughout the cycle. And so again, like we're saying, if you're saying that 5 hours is what we can do a week, we're going to do an hour on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you need to make sure that that hour is blocked off and protected on your calendar so that every day you are on that phone for an hour making these calls, slowly chipping away at whatever that goal might be for your ultimate reelection. You have to keep this on there now because again, you don't want to be that candidate who feels like they can't be at their doors, who can't be out in the community talking to the people that they were voted to represent because you have to spend all this time in call time. If you do it now, if you do it over the course of the cycle, then you do have opportunities to engage more with the people that elected you, right? You do have opportunities to engage with your family, et cetera, because you're not blocking off huge chunks of time, but you're literally thinking strategic and intentionally about what this looks like over the course of, the year, 2 years, 4 years before your reelection.
And I want to say something about, so we understand, different states, different offices have different rules about this. So some, in some states, for example, you can't raise from lobbyists during session. Some states you can't raise money at all during session. So you need to be very aware of what the rules are in your state or for your office. But that doesn't mean that you can't invest in making sure your call time when you are out of session or when you can raise money is going to be really productive. So, do donor research if you can't, if you are able to commit 5 hours to call time, but you actually can't raise money legally, do donor research. Make sure that
continue to add to that Rolodex.
Add to the Rolodex. Make sure that it's easy for you for when you are able to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Always, always, always check the rules and the laws of your governing state because it is not our intention for anyone to fall into compliance issues or trouble. So resolicitation, we tell people all the time that if someone is given to you once, they are likely to give again, particularly if you've won. So you've shown them that they've made a great investment. You said that if you invested this amount of money in me, that I would win and be able to fight for these things. And guess what? That happened. And so call those donors back. Make sure that you help them to understand how they helped you to get into this particular place, but how they helped you to fight for these particular issues. And now you have a track record of fighting for these values and on these issues. So ask them to continue to support you, and you can do that in a variety of ways. If they're a low dollar donor, right? So there's someone who's like, Kiana, as in me as the candidate, I can't give a ton of money, right? Like I'm never going to be one of those folks who can give you a $500 contribution. But you know what is helpful? If they make a $5 recurring contribution from now until your election day. Like that adds up. And those are foundational people who will help you bring on staff, right? Who will help you get water and drinks and things of that nature for your volunteers. Like those are those like bread and butter folks who are that foundational support of your campaign. And so right after an election, that's a really good time to call someone and ask them to become a recurring donor. It really helps set you up for success for your reelection.
And another thing, so again, wanting to make sure that we're being in compliance with state laws. Just because you can't ask somebody for a contribution doesn't mean you shouldn't keep in touch with them. Because oftentimes, the reason somebody donates to you is because you either embody something that they really care about, you're going to fight for something that they really care about, and how you can make sure to keep that donor candidate connection tight is to, call your bigger donors after you have a really big legislative success. Make sure that they know about that. That's a really good time to resolicit people is after you've done what they sent you to do in the first place. So, think about it strategically and, sort of stagger your time. So maybe the best day or the best time to call donors back is like the day after session because you actually have a lot to report out on. And so, sort of think of it strategically and make sure that you're engaging with your donors.
All right. So now we have another round of questions. I hope you have lots of them. So I think we're going to shoot it back to Leanna and let her tell us what questions we have.
Yep. A bunch of great questions have been coming in. Let's dive in. First, I just got elected this past November for the first time to a 2-year term.
Okay.
Realistically, how soon do I have to start fundraising for?
So I'm just gonna go back to that slide that says you should always be fundraising. So like literally, if you've not started by now, I would love for you to start tomorrow, right? So like think through, can I spend an hour tomorrow in call time? And who can I call? Like who are those folks who gave to me previously that I've not chatted with? Who can I tell about the good work that I'm doing while I'm in this 2-year term and have those conversations? Can I start to plan maybe a late spring event? And who might my host be for those events? Like those are questions that you can be asking yourself now, and hopefully a volunteer or someone can help sort of tap in and help you plan those events and start to raise the money that you'll need for your reelection campaign. So start now is the answer.
Right. And if I have limited time in terms of hosting fundraiser events specifically, what is the best use of my limited time for events? Do you suggest a picnic, a gala? What are your suggestions?
So you want to keep your fundraising costs low. So like there are lots of like really like I don't want to say cheap, but thrifty events that candidates can have that allow them to raise money, but also sort of keep things sort of low key. So like I had a candidate in Michigan who liked to have sort of an apple focused event because they have like apple picking in Michigan in the fall. So she had like an apple cider and donuts fundraiser every year. Like apple cider and donuts, ridiculously thrifty, but like you have those folks come, you have some nice hot apple cider, and you have an opportunity to tell those folks about what you've been working on and why you need to be reelected. It can again bring folks around something that's like really central to the state or the district in which you're working in. So feel free to get creative about what a fundraiser might look like to bring folks together.
And also really try not to spend a lot of money or time on planning a fundraiser. Outsource that and show up.
Yeah, you don't want to, people aren't coming for the caviar or coming for the high-end champagne or whatever else it might be. They're coming for you. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking through your budget. Think through, who might be a host for an event, who can really sort of help make sure that you meet your fundraising goals, but again, that you don't spend a lot of time and money to make sure those things happen.
Sure, great. Next question. I'm 4 months into the job and I'm already thinking about re-election, but most importantly, reaching out to my constituents and voters. I want to be visible and attentive, but I also want to respect spaces or rooms that are deemed safe spaces for a community or members of a community that I'm not a part of. Any advice on how to navigate those situations and still be visible?
So I have a couple of thoughts because I think, like we're in a sort of new era of politics where the things that are required of both women serving and just constituents is sort of different because oftentimes we're talking about really personal, attacks on women's access to healthcare and things that are really, really sort of sensitive and hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to, display high emotional IQ,
Mm-hmm.
not, don't go into a space thinking it's where you campaign. And also don't go into a space thinking that people want to hear you talk.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they want you to listen.
Right.
And that's the most important thing, especially if it's not someplace where you feel like, and not that you don't belong, but that it's not your place to take up all the space and time in the room. So I would be really mindful to listen,
right,
and don't try to take over the conversation because I think that that's something that people really struggle with. The other thing, to the first part of your question, how to communicate with voters and constituents, something that I say that I have candidates do often. Sorry, not candidates, people who are serving in office, who are wanting to highlight their legislative accomplishments, is to make a Google like poll or petition or something where you can capture information that shows that you're doing the work. So I'll give an example of a woman, an incumbent. She's a first-term incumbent. She's in New Hampshire. And a big thing that she talked about was expanding access to voting rights. And so what she's doing in New Hampshire, she sponsored a bill and she put together a petition where she could put it up on social media and gather signatures of people in New Hampshire, specifically New Hampshire voters, who wanted to see this bill, passed. So it was expanding access to voting rights. And so what that does, twofold, it shows how much support there is for this issue in New Hampshire that she can use and stand up on the Senate floor and say, 2,537 people have contacted me from New Hampshire who want this bill to pass, which is a powerful thing, and really valuable. The other thing that it does is it helps build her list. So it's a constituency that she didn't necessarily know she had, and it helps her build her case for reelection. So, if this bill passes, which is, it's looking like it's going to, it'll be really great. And then she can use that list to, to sort of celebrate that. And if it doesn't pass, she has a list of 2,000, however many people who are going to be really angry about it, who she can, sort of motivate to help her win re-election.
Yeah, and go back and fight.
Yeah, people need her to be there and need her to be fighting.
Right.
Great. Next question. On my last race, I had raised very little money and ended up having a volunteer campaign manager. This time, I would like to bring on someone full-time and pay them. But how can I find good people to hire?
So sometimes you can find somebody right there in your local community. We often tell people to go to your local Democratic Party events and things of that nature and see who's active and engaged. Because those people who are active, engaged, those people who are willing to volunteer for the annual picnic or whatever else it might be, are often the people that you need on your side as your campaign manager, right? So they're folks who know the district, but they're also folks who are willing to do the work. And sometimes it can be super simple. It can be as super simple as that in terms of finding someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good. The other thing is, especially if you're running for a pretty local, a local office, oftentime the kids from, I shouldn't call them kids, but they are kids. The students, that's right. The students who are in, the college Democratic clubs,
right,
are, it's also a great way. That's how I got my first job. I was just right out of college and somebody hired me because I, had a pulse and cared about this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and here I am 20 years later. So it makes sense to sort of network and be plugged into the party structure because they can help you.
Yeah, and there are lots of trainings that are available online. That are available online that can sort of help them navigate what does it look like to be in this particular space. I think a lot of the candidates get really afraid that they don't have someone who's worked on campaigns for the last 10 years, right? Like if I don't have this candidate, this campaign manager with all this experience and all of these different things, then this isn't the campaign manager for me. But really, it's about how do you work with this person, right? Like, is this a person who you can trust to give certain sort of activities or things to do and that they will do them? And if they don't know how to do them, to seek advice and seek resources for folks who will help them do those things. And so if you have those things, we can connect them to trainings that will help them move your campaign forward. And in fact, we will talk about one of those lovely resources in just a few moments.
Any other questions, Leanna?
Yep. One quick final question. If I'm a state rep and we are in session right now and not allowed to fundraise, what are the top 2 things that I should be doing in the meantime until I can fundraise?
Sure. So definitely keep Rolodexing, keep, that list, keep it up to date as much as you can. It will be so helpful when you're starting to call, for call time when that happens. The other thing is, make sure to highlight success and grow the base of people who care about the issues that you're supporting in your state now. And you can do that without, with a very little lift.
Right. That means posting on social media, like we mentioned before, sending out those emails to let folks know what you're fighting for. You don't necessarily have to ask for money to tell people, here is what I'm fighting for. You elected me for this, and this is what I'm doing. Sending out those petitions and finding out what folks are really interested and engaged on. But then again, here's something I'm fighting on. And if you're with me, I need you to like let me know. And these are opportunities to keep those folks engaged, keep your email list going, and things of that nature, so that you are ready to to start, you know, in full force when you are able to fundraise after session.
Great, that's all.
Awesome. Those are really great questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so the key takeaways here is you want to write a new fundraising plan, or if you did not have one last time, to write a fundraising plan. And in there, again, you want to focus on who are the folks who have given to your campaign before, and who are the folks who should be invested in your campaign, because it benefits them to have someone like you in elected office. You are fighting for the kids, you're fighting for the environment, you're fighting for reproductive choice. These are things that they care about. And so because they care about it, they should invest in a candidate who looks like you. So write a new plan and make sure that you flush out who those folks are, when you might be able to ask them for money, and sort of how much money you think they might be able to give to your campaign. Again, continue to cultivate new donors and Rolodex yourself. Go to events, meet some new people, talk to folks about what it is that you're doing. As Molly mentioned, do those petitions and find out what folks are engaged on and what they care about, so that you can cultivate new people and you can Rolodex yourself and continue to build a list of people who might be willing to invest in your campaign. And then finally, keep in touch with your volunteer network. Those people are amazing. They gave up hours of their time to help get you elected. So you want to keep them engaged so that as you gear up for re-election, they are willing to be there with you again.
That's right. Okay, well, that's all our time. We want to make sure to thank our funding partners. We have AFT, AFSCME, Act Blue, UFCW, and the NEA to thank for this.
Thank you so much, so that we can make these things available to our friends out there who want to run for office. And finally, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but again, we have the Emily's List Training Center. It is an amazing resource that has so many different things on, like how to fundraise and building a field plan and just building a digital calendar so you know what to post on social media, how to make an ad.
That's right.
And this is really key too as you think through this staffing period too, right? So like, I want to hire a staffer. I'm not really sure what they know. Your staffer can go to the Emily's List Training Center and learn a ton of things that will make them more productive and more helpful to you. So go to trainingcenter.emilyslist.org and access lots of really cool information. There is a very low fee that you'll have to pay, but you will find it pretty reasonable, I believe.
You will. And
it's $9. So you'll find it pretty reasonable. And again, it has lots of really valuable information that you and your future campaign manager or your future volunteers can use to help keep you in office.
That's right. And we do that because we run into some compliance issues if we give it away for free.
Right. So we'll teach you what you need to know. We'll teach that staffer what they need to know. You need to go to the training center, which is, again, trainingcenter.emilyslist.org. And obviously, we always want to elect women.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining us.